We can be seated. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. Ki mimini balemot. Lechein samach libi viagel kivodi. Af bisari yishkon levetach. Ki lo tazov nafshi lishol. Lo titein chasidcha lirot shachat. Todien yorech hayim. Sovas machot et panecha. Ne'imot b'mincha netzach. These words come from the 16th Psalm. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore, my heart exults and my soul rejoices, for my being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. We gather together today to remember our father, our friend, our colleague, our community member, our example, Marvin Strait. If you take a look around the room, you see that as a rabbi, I'm a little upset because there's more people here than there are on Yom Kippur. We're going to have to work on that. But the room is full because one person filled the room. Because Marvin Strait filled this room. And he filled it by touching the lives of everyone in this room. And as we all know, as things would go with Marvin, everything is done first class. And of course, at a first class affair, there's always a formal welcome. And so I'd like to invite James Barish to come and give us our very, very formal welcome.
It's not a formal welcome, but it was nice of you to say. I thought...
I know it's informal. I was trying to set you up here. Come on.
This is Laurel and Hardy, but we understand. When we were planning the service and some other details, it all of a sudden dawned on me that today is the last time Marvin will be in the synagogue. And you all knew Marvin and his tremendous personality and how no one loved to tell stories like Marvin. And no one had such, they radiated, he shone when he told a story. He was full of glee, and even though you heard the same story 100 times, you liked it every time because of Marvin's wonderful delivery. And so it dawned on me that this being the last time Marvin will be here in the synagogue, I thought back to the first time he was in the synagogue. And I'm sure several of you are going to be thinking, what's he talking about? And those of you who know will start laughing before I get to the third sentence. And the rest are going to have to wait till I finish the paragraph. So, what are you telling me? Stay closer? Oh, okay. Thank you. So Marvin had come here from Lamar. His mentor was a fellow by the name of another Marvin, another CPA by the name of Marv Stone. Marv Stone had been president of the Colorado Society, president of the AICPA, and he was Marv Strait's role model. Marvin Stone made an offer to Marvin Strait, who was practicing in Lamar, to come to Colorado Springs and start a new practice here in the name of Stone Gray. But the deal was, Marvin, our Marvin Strait, you're on your own, sink or swim. You got to build it up. So Marvin came in the late summer, just before the major Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And Marvin came to synagogue here in his suit and being very proper. And most Jewish men, many Jewish men, even us sort of non-observant, super not religious ones, tend to have a bag like this, which has got a prayer shawl in it, that we got at our bar mitzvahs. Other more observant ones use them all the time, and those of us who don't use them all the time always have it at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And you take your prayer shawl out of this bag. So Marvin came in his suit and everything, and he sat down sort of where, right in there somewhere, and he wanted to make himself known in the community. He reached in and he strung out his prayer shawl, and he goes to put it on, and somebody taps him on the shoulder from behind. He says, "You dropped these." Turns out, last year, it was Shirley's time of the month. But by the way, I was told not to use that expression, that it's too old 1950s, but so be it. That's how Marvin told the story. Anyway, Marvin said, I turned around in horror as this guy goes to hand me these 2 tampons. And he's thinking, here I am trying to make a name in the community. No one will ever talk to me. So I thought we just had to begin with a little humor. I can't talk about too much more. I'm much too broken up, and you don't want to hear me anyway. But Marvin was just one of the most special human beings we all knew. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Thank you, James. When I came here to Colorado Springs, I was driving on my way here to move to Colorado Springs literally on the day that Shirley passed away. And not quite a year later, we had the unveiling of Shirley's headstone in Pueblo. And Marv insisted that I drive to Pueblo with him in his car, first of all, because he told me I'd never find the cemetery because it's left, right, sideways, and I would never find it. And so he insisted that I drive with him. And so he picked me up here at Temple Shalom. We got in the car, and before we got to I-25 to drive down to Pueblo, he had already told me that story. Just so we're all clear at the start, somebody asked me, are you allowed to laugh at a funeral? And the answer to the question is this: did you laugh with Marvin in life? And if the answer is yes, then it's a good thing to laugh with Marvin now. We have 3 portions to a Jewish funeral. The first in Hebrew we call nechama. It means comfort. There are 2 parts of comfort. One is to comfort Marv's family and his friends. The other is to comfort his soul. In our Jewish tradition, when we die, our soul goes, in Hebrew we say, me'olam hazeh le'olam haba, from this world to the world to come. And as we are here to accompany his soul, it sounds like an odd phrase, but I'll explain. The Hebrew word for funeral is levaya. And if you look it up in a Hebrew English dictionary, you will see levaya, and then in the English it'll say funeral. But the word really comes from the verb to accompany. So we are here today because we have a job to do. We have a task to fulfill. And that task is to accompany Marv's soul as it begins its journey from this world to the world to come. And so we comfort ourselves, and we also comfort Marvin's soul. The second part of our levaya is what we call in Hebrew hesped. We often translate it as eulogy, telling the story of a person's life, and hopefully we also, and in this case it's a very easy thing to do, glean some lessons that we can live by in our lives. On the occasion that might be a difficult thing for a person here or a person there, it's going to be difficult today to pare down the lessons because there are oh so many. And then our final part of our Levaya are the burial prayers that we will recite at the graveside when we make our way down to B'nai Jacob Cemetery in Pueblo. But with that in mind, we continue with the words of Nechama, the words of comfort that we find in the book of Psalms. Adonai ma'adam v'te'adehu ben enosh v'tichashvehu, Adam lehevel dama, yamav ketzel over, baboker yatzitz v'chalaf, le'ever lamov v'yavesh. Tashev enosh ad dakav tomar, shuvu b'nei adam, lu chachmu yishchalu zot. O God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to return to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures." Oh, if we were wise, if we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright, for they shall have peace. O God, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. Of all of the Psalms of comfort, perhaps the most well known is the 23rd Psalm. We hear its words now in Hebrew and in English as well. Adonai roi lo echsar, benoteshe yirbitzeini, al mei menuchot, yinaleini, nafshi shovev, Yancheini b'maglei tzedek liman shimo. Gam ki lech b'geit al mavet lo yirara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, hemay nachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, deshanti b'shemen roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, Kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai, le'orech yamim. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In ancient times, the psalmists, for those of us who believe it was King David, for those of us who believe it was others of his generation, whoever it may have been that wrote these words, the 121st Psalm was certainly written in a place that looked like Colorado Springs. Of course, it was written in Israel, but was probably written at the bottom of the foothills of Jerusalem, or maybe it was up where the current border between Israel and Syria and Lebanon is, where Mount Hermon, the tallest mountain in Israel, is located. But the psalmist wrote these words, "I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever." These words begin in Hebrew this way. Esainai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim ve'aretz. In our Jewish tradition, we look to our liturgy, we look to the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, as we try to understand the intricacies and the emotions of death and of mourning. One of the places we turn is to the book of Job. In the book of Job, at the very beginning of the book, in chapter 1, Job says, Adonai natan, Adonai lakach, Yehishem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed is God's name. Like Job, we say the words Adonai natan. God has given. God has given to the world a soul that touched far more people than we could even fit in this very, very full room if we emptied all of you out and let the next shift come in. A soul that helped people every step along the way. A soul that, if we followed the example of this soul, it's very easy to be convinced that the world would probably be a much better place than it is right now. A soul that gave love to family, a soul that taught us how to be a mensch. If you're unfamiliar with the word mensch, it's a Yiddish word, and if you look it up in the dictionary, there's a giant picture of Marvin Strait. And like Job, we also say, Adonai lakach, God has taken away. We can sit and ask the questions of why now? Why with this illness? Why in this way? And I'll tell you the answer to all those questions right now. I don't know. And either do you. And so I wonder, why do we ask the question, why? Maybe we should ask a different question. What? What did Marvin do that made my life better and a lot of other people's lives better? When? When will I figure out that I'm supposed to also live a life by the lessons that he taught by the way he lived his in helping other people? I know you're already answering those questions for yourselves right now, so I don't need to give you the answers to those questions. But like Job, we also say, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. May God's name be blessed. Because for these 88 plus years that Marvin was part of our world, that was a little gift from God to each and every one of us in this room right now, and to each and every one of those who are not in this room but knew him along that pathway. And so like Job, we wonder, God took in God's way, God gave in God's way, blessed is God's name. How do we remember Marvin Strait? And the answer is we begin to tell a story, and we'll begin to tell that story here. We can't tell the whole story because then Marvin would repeat it 100 more times to all of us. But we can't tell the whole story because, frankly, how do you tell an 88-year story in what just comes down to really a few minutes sitting here in the sanctuary of Temple Shalom? You can't. But we can begin to tell the story. And then this afternoon and tomorrow and next week and next month and next year, we'll continue to tell the story. And if you repeat part of it, as you know, you'll make Marvin happy. So repeat the story. But we'll begin by inviting the most important people here to talk. Now, I know you're wondering, who are the most important people? They're the future. Now, I know we all think we ourselves are important, and we think that our kids are pretty important. But you know how to really judge a person's character? And I really believe this. You can judge a person's character of being a mensch, of being a good person, if their grandchildren are mensches. Then you know that they've done the work to pass on this idea from generation to generation. And so we're going to hear a little bit about Zadie from Marv's grandchildren. So we're going to invite 3 of his grandchildren to come and share with us. We're going to invite Sam and Alex and Jake, who are going to share some words about their grandfather with all of us. So, gentlemen, I'm going to leave it to you.
My Zadie was someone who always loved his family. He always loved taking care of us and doing all he could to help. I know he's helped me out quite a few times and on just normal stuff, but on some just normal stuff, like he would always enjoy going out to dinner and would always like to invite part of the family, but when it came time to pay, he would never let anyone else pay. He would always make sure to do it so that unless it was his birthday, you would have to talk to the waiter or waitress as they're picking up the food, because otherwise you are not going to be able to pay. He would not allow it. But even beyond that, he was always supportive of whatever I wanted to do. I know he's helped me along for going to college and just helping me out wherever he could. And for that, I'm always thankful. But he also just loved helping out our whole family. I know he always has, and I'm going to miss him.
Everybody, I'm Sam. Some things I love about our Zadie. You've probably, lift the mic, okay. Is that satisfactory? All right. So, probably all knew about his witty humor, and he always had a funny joke or story to share. This little one-punch jokes, I'll share a couple of them with you, even though you've probably heard them before. I'm going to repeat like he did. He had these jokes about kind of little digs at some of Colorado's bordering states. So about Colorado's bordering states, he had these little jokes about them, like the N on the Nebraska helmet, standing for knowledge, and he would share his life stories a lot, and he was in the Army coming out of college, and first he was in infantry, but at the first chance he got, he moved to the accounting corps. He would always tell me their motto is, "We don't retreat, we backspace." So, yeah, just repeating more. In his last few years, a lot of our talks would just center around his life stories, and sharing that was really, really special to me. And seeing a lot of you here who are involved in those stories is also very special too. I associate him so much with our Bubi as well, just as an institution in our lives, as our grandparents. And just the way he treated the people he loved is something I want to emulate, and I work to emulate in my life. He was such a strong supporter of everyone in every way he could be, as you all know. He could be tough on us sometimes, but he was so admirably outspoken, and he accomplished a lot with that. And he was always so optimistic about our own potential and his own potential too. For example, just a little less than 2 months ago, he signed a 3-year lease for office space for himself to keep going. So he was always ready just to keep going, move on to the next evolution, and that's so admirable to me as well. Thank you.
I think Rabbi had it right. My Zadie was the epitome of a true mensch. He treated everyone with kindness. He would always, no matter what, give back to his friends and his community, his city, his state, and his country. He was truly selfless and fiercely loyal to everyone that knew him, no matter if you played a small role in his life, no matter if he was family or friends, he would stand up for you, no matter what. And he would always make time for people and always show up, and he was always there for everyone in his life. He was truly one of the hardest workers I've ever met. His work ethic was unimpeachable, and his vast intellect and sharp wit were important, but not as much to me as his work ethic. And no matter what he did, he would never be outworked by anyone. He was truly a role model to me. And for a few summers, when I was in high school, I came to Colorado Springs to stay with him and my Bubi, and I worked as a caddy at the Broadmoor. And I'm not sure if anyone out there here today saw me as a caddy, or maybe I caddied for you, but it was nice to have some extra money. It was nice to have a chance to learn a lot about work and about life. But what truly meant the most to me is that I had the opportunity to share with my community and my Zadie's community what I learned from him and the values of hard work and kindness and respect. And most of all, he was a man of integrity. He was truly honest. He always said what was on his mind, and he meant what he said, and he did what he said. He was also a man of incredible morality, and he would unabashedly stand up for what he believed is right, no matter what. To me, his most inspirational moment was the stance he took at the El Paso Club and fighting doggedly to ensure that women could also join the club. Now, that didn't happen, and he eventually left the club and maybe ruffled some feathers along the way. But that didn't matter to him because he took a stance for what he believed was right, and that's something I aspire to do every single day. And that instance is an example of his embodiment to the values of inclusion, the values of respect, and the notion that no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter where you come from, no matter what you believe, you deserve a seat at the table. You deserve a fair shot to create a life that is better for yourself, is better for your family, is better for the community, and is better for the country. And he really stood for all of those things and will always be one of my greatest role models. And at the end of the day, he should be remembered as someone that stood up for his friends, stood up for his family, stood up for his community, and stood up for his country and the ideals of the American dream. And I'll always take that to heart. And I'd just like to end by telling you all the story of this suit that I'm wearing. I came to Colorado Springs for my boobie's funeral, and I didn't own a suit. So after a few hours of searching, my mom and I found this one on discount at an outlet store. And it fit me perfectly. I didn't need to get it tailored. And that's something my boobie would have loved. She was one to always be a shrewd consumer and seek out the best deal. And we did that, and we got the best suit for the occasion. And it was like it was fate. It was kismet. And I think I tried to embody the values that my Zadie stood for every day in what I do. And I had interned after college for a very long time. And I tried to never be outworked and always stand up for the right thing. And I think the culmination of me trying to do that was last year when I ended up actually getting promoted and becoming a full-time employee and getting my dream job. And just like before my boobie's funeral, I got that call mere hours before I arrived in Colorado Springs last year at what would be the final time that I saw my Zadie. And that too was also fate. It was kismet. And I really thank you all for being here.
Marvin Strait was born on December 22nd, 1933, in Pueblo, Colorado, to Rose and Harry Strait. He grew up with his sister Adeline, and I guess he started dating early because he met Shirley in junior high, and it lasted for a couple of years, 62 years of marriage. Marv started working early, working part-time with his father on the Santa Fe Railroad, and had a newspaper delivery route. And early on in college, he and Shirley were married, and he built a business and built a life. 3 children, Debbie and Denise and Michael, 4 grandchildren. He attended Arizona State University. I think I upset a couple of people in the room when I put the state on the end of that, but I'm not sure. He got a bachelor's degree in accounting and then went off to the big city to become an accountant, Lamar, Colorado. But as he said, he was the only accountant in 5 cities, or 5 counties, I should say. And if you read the obituary in the Gazette and around town, you saw the quote that I know came directly from Marv, which is, they'll use me and like me, or they'll use me and hate me, but at least they'll use me as their accountant. And he claimed to know everybody there. So being the new rabbi in town, as we're driving down to Pueblo for Shirley's unveiling, I thought I'd put him to the test. Because my wife's best friend, growing up in Southern California, well, her family was from the huge Colorado metropolis of Wiley, Colorado. If you don't know where Wiley is, it's a little tiny town outside the huge town of Lamar, Colorado. And so he says, "What's their name?" And I said, "Marv, you don't know this family that came from this town that has like 12 people that live in it." He says, "What's the family name?" Well, I didn't know the mother's maiden name, so I called my wife on the phone from the car. She tells me their maiden name, and Marv says, "So is your wife's best friend the oldest, the middle, or the youngest daughter?" And they were 3 sisters from this. He knew the family. "Yeah, I did their taxes for like 15 years. Of course I know them." I said, "Who else did you do the taxes for in the town of Wiley?" He said, "Everyone, like 8 people live there. I did taxes for everybody in the whole town." But he built a wonderful business, and he built, as you've heard from his grandchildren, this wonderful work ethic. And he would say, and I know many of you have heard this from him, he said it to me, James repeated it to me just yesterday, and I know multiple people have said these words that Marv has said, which is, he said, it's not really about the money. If you take care of your people, take care of your clients, you'll make a very good living. And as James and I were talking about it just the other day, it's an ethic that's not around as much anymore. That we worry too much about the money, and also the money, and the third thing we worry about is the money. But Marv took care of his people. And I don't think that Marv thought of any of the people that were his clients as his clients. They were his friends and they were his people. They weren't clients. Clients are people that you deal with and they pay you and then they disappear. But for Marv, they were his people. They were his community. They were his friends. They were the people that he built relationships with. And so over the years of this accounting practice that he built, first in Lamar and then he left the big city and came to these little towns over here, But he built it on that idea of really taking care of people and knowing that if you take care of the people, you'll get paid. And so when he came here, he did that and not just took care of the people there, but he took care of people in many other ways. He was on the board. I'd read you the list of what he was on the board of, but you guys have something to do between now and next Tuesday. I mean, he helped out so many organizations throughout our city, throughout our county, throughout the entire state, serving as a treasurer and a board member, helping found foundations all over the place, including for the Fine Arts Center and for school districts, and even here at Temple Shalom. He helped to build foundations that would help fund all of the things that are important to us in our community. And he stood for things that were important. We heard the story of the El Paso Club. There's also the story of the court case with the women's rodeo, where he was the expert witness that changed the trial. Now, how do I, someone who was not at the trial and knows nothing about, well, I know Jewish law, but this American law stuff, I don't know anything about that. How do I know that he changed the trial? Because the women's rodeo organization won a settlement from the men's rodeo organization to the exact penny amount that Marv said they should get when he was the expert witness on the stand. So yeah, he's the one who changed that trial. And then I was told this story, that there was a reception afterwards, and at that reception, 15 female rodeo stars bent his head over and kissed his bald head, and he had a very large smile the entire time. You heard about the importance of his family, and it wasn't just that he paid the check with the dollars that you heard about from his grandsons, but he paid the check with his love also of gathering the family together. He also knew the right way to build a family. Shirley's always right and knows best. Yeah. But this is how he built his family, and he built groups of friends. The amount of charity work he did in our community, you can't even begin to add up all of the dollars that came to various important causes because of the work that Marv did. There were, here the local assistance league needed a little help, and he said, this is an exact quote, so if you think I'm going to cuss on the bema without a quote, I don't know if it's cussing, but he said, "I will be the badass to rescue any of your problems." And after he rescued them, then he did all the accounting for the Assistance League for free. He had his little old ladies club, that's the LOLs. I know all of you who text think LOL stands for something else, but it doesn't stand for lots of laughs. It stands for little old ladies. And the widows of his friends who had passed away, he would take them out to dine. He also had a love of watching sports. Steve would tell me about going to USAFA football games with him and watching golf and sports. I think it was Debbie's words that really sums up the character of this man that we're thinking of today. She said, "Decent, righteous, and good, incredibly rare." I think it's true. No one was more dedicated to his clients and to his family, and always wound up being friends with those people that he was with. As we know, he would share stories over and over and over again, and he would share them because he wanted to share not only his life, but the wonderful life of the peoples with whom he intermingled. After Shirley's death, he wound up in that place that so many people do after the death of a spouse for so many decades. And, well, with a little help from Roz, a little help from Denise, they brought along someone who they thought should meet, and Kathleen came along, and they were both friends of Roz's. She thought they would get along well, and I guess there was a dinner, and if I wrote the names down correctly, you told me it was Chuck and Mary Lou, right? Is that who that you out to dinner with? And I guess there were some questions, and the questions were, it looks like she's Irish. She's Irish? Yes. And she's Catholic? Yes. And Marv, she's a Democrat? Yes. And they said, then she's a keeper. And two people who had lost loving spouses of decades came together to enjoy some time together. And as Kathleen said, as much as I gave to him, he gave me 100 times more. Kathleen, I think you're not the only person in this room who would say the same exact thing. As much as I gave to him, he gave me 100 times more. Despite the auspicious beginnings of Marv Strait here at Temple Shalom, of which you heard at the beginning of our service, if you walked in late, ask your friends later. But Marv became a board member here. He helped found the Temple Shalom Foundation to set things up for Temple Shalom's future. And today we are here to say goodbye and thank you to a man who gave us an example of how to live. So what do we do when we leave this place as we bring to a close this little bit of storytelling. We go out in the world, and instead of focusing on the dollar amount that I'm supposed to bring in my job, we can focus on how I treat the people with whom I interact in my work. And when people notice that I do that, we can tell them, I really do that because I learned from my mentor, Marvin Strait. When we go out to dinner and we either physically pick up the tab with our credit card or we make dinner or lunch a better thing because we want everybody to come together, you can say that I did that because my Zaidi, Marv, taught me that you should take care of family. When you do everything in a first-class way, you can say it's because my friend Marvin Strait, I saw what a good life he built when he did everything in a first-class way. And so I want to emulate that as well. So as we leave this place today, I hope that you'll find in your hearts to help those around you, to focus on the people and not the dollars, to focus on the relationships and not the glorious titles, to bring family close together, to bring friends close together, and to build and to build and to build community. Because for 88 years, that's what Marvin Strait did. He built community. A little tiny portion of that community is in this room today. And today we celebrate the community that he built by saying thank you and accompanying his soul on its journey to the world to come. We'll close our prayers here in the sanctuary with one final prayer. Before we do, I want to give you this information. After the El Male Rachamim prayer, which I will chant in Hebrew and in English for you, we'll remain seated while we have our casket bearers come forward to bring the casket back to the funeral coach and to let the family make their way to their car. Afterwards, we invite all of you to join in the procession to B'nai Jacob Cemetery in Pueblo. It's located at Montezuma Road and West 23rd Street in Pueblo, Colorado. If you will join us there, you can put B'nai Jacob Cemetery into your mapping program if you don't find it there. Additionally, if you put in Pioneer Cemetery of Pueblo, it'll get you to the right area, and then you'll see all the cars and know where we are. We'll have the burial ceremonies there at B'nai Jacob Cemetery in Pueblo. That will be followed by a reception at the Broadmoor afterwards. We'll probably be there roughly 5 o'clock or so. There will be a Shiva Minyan at the end of the reception this evening. There will also be a Shiva Minyan at the Strait House on Monday evening and Tuesday evening as well at 7 p.m. All of that information is also available we'll have that available for you on the temple website so that you can make sure that that information is available to you. Also, the gates of the house, it's in a gated community, but we've arranged, I believe, to have the gates open. Is that right? So on Monday and Tuesday night for the 7 o'clock minyan, for the 7 o'clock memorial service at the house, the gates will be open and you'll be able to make your way. Once you come through the gates, it's just straight on down the road there. Again, all addresses and information will be on the Temple Shalom website. I ask you all to please rise as we chant the words of our memorial prayer, El Male Rachamim. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utarim, Kezohar Araki Amazirim, Et Nishmat Chai Menachem Ben Tzvi, Shalach Olamo, Baal Rachamim, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור ביצור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Chaim Menachem ben Tzvi, to Marvin Strait, who has entered his eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. We'd like to ask the casket bearers to come forward. Again, we ask that all of you remain in your places until the family have been able to make their way to the car. And again, we'll remind you that the B'nai Jacob Cemetery is located near the corner of Montezuma Road and West 23rd Street in Pueblo. We'll convene there in roughly 45 to 55 minutes, however long it takes us all to make our way down to the cemetery. And then again, when we leave from there, we'll make our way to the Broadmoor for the reception and for this evening's Shiva Minyan. On behalf of the entire family and on behalf of Temple Shalom, I want to thank all of you for being here today. Your presence is a testament to all that Marv Strait gave to this congregation, to his family, and to our entire community. May he truly rest in peace. And James, you want to say one final remark? Yeah, for those in the back who didn't hear that, when you go to the Broadmoor a little later, you'll let them know that the reception's at the golf club, and when you come in, you'll let the folks at the gate know that you're going to the reception for the Strait family at the golf club. We'll remain seated as we let the family now make their way to the cars. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you at the graveside in Pueblo in about 45 or 55 minutes. Thank you, everyone.